Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of stories affecting the Sikh community. And in Canada, Mark Carney's feet are being held firmly to the fire by Sikh activists, as the latest televised debate highlights the real threat to life Khalistani activists face from India every single day. But whilst the Canadian government, like many other Western governments, might shake India's hand in public, the country's intelligence service is clearly thinking something else, as we ask who's just spying on Hindu mandirs, the well-known base of operations for raw agents, as drones are spotted by Khalistani campaigners protesting outside. Intriguing details to follow. And loads more on today's show, but joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. It's exciting to see how many people are actually interacting with our little Substack channel. It is getting more views, it's getting more subscribers, but I've also noted that we are trying to find a backdoor into India, and maybe it's working because as more people will find Substack, hopefully they'll come over and check out the channel, find use of VPNs or other methods to get in there to understand what is Savage TV. What is Perspectives? And what are these pasty white guys talking about? So again, if you find us on Substack, let us know if you've come over from there, because we're trying to get the word out in as many ways as we can to get people to tune into our channel, because we know we are being shadow banned. And again, you can be a part of countering that by liking, sharing, and of course, subscribing or encouraging friends to subscribe to our channel. But again, thanks for all of your comments. Don't forget to stick around to the end of the show to see which ones made the grade today. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed, do spread the word around. And in the meantime, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, we will indeed be taking a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, so do stay tuned for that. Right, James, what are you going to start us off with this morning?
It appears that there's a lot of information coming out in relation to the explosion at the police station in Kashmir. Not only is there a lot of blame to be looked at here, but also the failure to follow the standard operating protocols. We are looking at a story that has come out, and or we've done research into the different stories that have come out to try and find some of the information, because it appeared to me on first look that with such a deadly explosive that accidentally detonated inside of a vehicle just over a week ago, that there should have been warning signs that this explosive material that was being held in storage at a police station at a residential home. The police station's in a residence, not just a police station. It's in a house surrounded by other houses. And why the systemic failure that they did not follow the protocols led to the death of 9 people and 30 others injured, not to mention the body parts that were blown over 100 meters into people's homes, or 100 yards. It is just a major failure on behalf of the government and law enforcement agents. Now, we know that the Red Fort bombing that happened last week, this was seen as an accidental detonation. Why? Well, apparently the explosives that they're using is notorious for any slight trigger to detonate it. This includes friction, so a little shock off your finger. It could be the fluorescent lighting. It is so volatile that there is no predicting how or when it could go off. And for the police to have this in storage in this police station was the first of several different systemic failures. Now, I've got the story here, but I've only highlighted certain parts because, again, we are on a time clock. As the old song goes, Angus, there's a long way to go, but a short time to get there. And that's exactly what we have in the show. So we try to summarize it for you. Now, of course, the Union Ministry of Home Affairs, the Joint Secretary, Mr. Lockend, both classified the event as unfortunate accidental explosion, as well as just really pushing that it was unnecessary speculation that they are trying to ask the media to refrain from. However, what they refer to as unnecessary, I think it is very, very necessary. We look at the lives lost and the other people that were impacted by this, and how many others could be impacted down the road if they are failing to follow procedures. Now, let's take a look at this team, first of all, that was handling the explosives and that they had sitting in an open area subjected to certain environmental conditions that could have impacted the volatility, making it even more of a risk. Now, one state investigation agency, the SIA inspector, was Mr. Shah, 37, who held an MBA from the University of Kashmir. 3 forensic scientists that were there from the laboratory. And again, they were both described as old hands at forensic investigation, and laboratory assistant Sakawat Ahmad Sheikh. Now, these individuals should have known the volatile conditions of which they were handling these explosives. Now, there were 2 crime branch photographers that were on hand, 2 revenue department officials. Did they really need to be there? Well, I don't think that they did at that point, but they were there to legally seal the evidence on behalf of the magistrate. Again, was this a necessary risk, knowing what they were dealing with? Now, there was also the civilian tailor. They had brought this individual in to sew the gunny sacks that they were going to put samples into. Now, just a thread and a needle sewing, believe it or not, could cause enough of a friction to detonate this highly sensitive material. So again, this is a major failure. Now, the most damning piece of evidence is the systemic failure is the presence of the 9th victim. As I said, the tailor. He was not a bystander. He had been called by the police agency to be there and assist in sample collection. Absolutely in no way does a tailor get trained or experienced in handling these type of situations. And that was a horrific call by the police that led to his death. And somebody needs to be held accountable for that as well. Now, as I said, what the chemical and composition is what's known as triacetone triperoxide, and that is the most sensitive and volatile chemical known. And that proves indisputably that the entire on-ground team was operating under a complete and false misapprehension that the materials they were handling were not that deadly in that situation. Now, they treated the cache of highly unstable chemical explosives with the same casual procedures as a seizure of narcotics or counterfeit currency, which really shows how they failed. Now, in terms of the official narrative, the immediate aftermath, the MHA's statement went beyond condolences. It constructed a preemptive defense. They were claiming that the seized materials had been kept securely in that open area of the police station and that the process of sampling was ongoing for 2 days. And it was being conducted in accordance with the prescribed SOP, or standard operating procedures. This report, though, that we've gathered here claims or demonstrates that these claims are factually and legally untenable. The decision to transport and store these materials is where this whole failure started. And that was for them to be transported to the police station in Nalgam. The SOP being followed that night was not just in violation of protocol, it was a sheer act of negligence, and that ignored a clear, deadly, and very recent warning. When we look at that, this material is known as the mother of Satan. This is very telling in what they're dealing with. Now, the Nalgam catastrophe cannot be understood as an isolated incident because it was the far more lethal, predictable culmination of a chain of events that included that event 4 days earlier and hundreds of kilometers away in the nation's capital. Yes, we're talking about the November 10th Delhi Red Fort car bombing, and that it was not just a preceding incident, it was a crucial, unheeded warning that revealed the exact volatile nature of the explosives that they were dealing with and that later exploded in that police station. Now, as we jump ahead here in this report, we're going to take a quick peek here at the warning of the Mother of Satan that they should have been aware of. Now, the central finding of the report, the security apparatus had in its possession all of the necessary information to prevent the Nalgam blast, but they failed to connect the dots or just failed to share the information from agency to agency. Now, on the November 10th Delhi blast, the device there, was sent for forensic analysis. Now, it was, as I said, the mixture of ammonium nitrate and triacetone triperoxide. Now, this is also known as TATP. The Nalgam cache, of course, seized in Fairabad from the same module and stored in Nalgam, contained 360 kilograms of ammonium nitrate and, of course, crucially, a liquid mix of hydrogen peroxide and acetone. Now, acetophenone, sorry, I pronounced that all wrong, but the chemical link, okay, the hydrogen peroxide and the acetone, a related chemical to the aforementioned, are the primary readily available precursors to make that mixture and manufacture TATP. We know that it's for a reason called by terrorist groups themselves the mother of Satan because of its notorious instability, and that's how it got its nickname. Now, it is not a military explosive, but a homemade explosive that is lethally sensitive. The international security bulletins and technical sheets on it warn that it's extremely sensitive to impact, friction, static electricity, and heat. The instability, such as that accidental detonation during manufacturing or that accidental detonation through transportation, is common. This should have been a huge intelligence clue, and it should have been what prevented this explosion at the police station. Now, of course, they're holding it in bulk. It is a massive thing that just acted as a ticking time bomb. And to have it in a residential community is further failure of their own practical systems and their handling protocols. Now, let's take a quick peek here at this because, again, we're running out of time on this. But again, you can reach this or read this whole report that we've gathered, and that'll be on our Substack, or actually it's already there for you. But the actions of the Nalgam team on the night of November 14th are definitive proof that they were operating in a complete information vacuum regarding the total risk. Now, the team of forensic and police experts, nobody was aware that the TATP findings of the Delhi blast would ever, transport, okay, so they should never be transporting 2,900 kilograms of what could be TAPT or TP precursors by road in a non-specialized Tata 407 truck. The storage, this volatile cache, for 2 days in an open area of a police station exposed to environmental triggers should never have happened. Manually handling, open, and sampling the liquid components late at night under artificial lights, a known trigger for some peroxides, again, a major failure. The employ of the civilian tailor to bring a needle and thread anywhere near a substance lethally sensitive to friction and static, another major failure. So these are just a few of many reasons that this could have been prevented and should be investigated at a much higher level. Now, the correct standard operating procedures that they failed to follow here is based on the analysis of national protocols and the correct SOP for large-scale explosive seizures. Now, this is according to India's own policies. Evacuate and isolate. The moment explosives are identified, the agency must freeze the grid and evacuate civilians. Instead, they brought the explosive into this residential community. The call for specialists, a bomb detonation team and bomb disposal squad, they must be called immediately to seize the site. So again, they were not called and they transported it in a non-secure vehicle. That, when I say non-secure, as opposed to, being fortified for handling explosives or transporting. Neutralize or secure the material should be neutralized on site. If it is stable and must be moved, it is to be transported by specialized explosive vans to a licensed explosive magazine or completely isolated secure location like an open stadium. Instead, they didn't do this. There was no police station storage, okay? So explosives experts explicitly state storing such large quantities of explosives at police stations or in any residential installation should be avoided. Again, very clear that had this protocol been followed, these lives could have been saved. And we've gone into much more detail here, but again, in the interest of time, I just thought that I wanted to bring this out, that this should have and could have been prevented, and the lives lost are not ones that could have been, or they are ones that should have been saved. They should never have been in that situation, and that is a major lesson to be learned. But again, there also needs to be accountability because this is wrong. We're going to jump on to another subject as we've been covering, and I'll do this quickly here, but we have been covering the 1984 genocide. Now, with that said, we've been posting up or sharing with you clips from different documentaries and other informative and educational programs. Now, these are all being gathered and put together on the True Crime and Justice TV site as well. But the big jump there is that they are right under the category of genocides, along with Germany and the Nazis, alongside of Syria, of Rwanda, and really driving home to the public and the Western world the importance to understand and to categorize this strictly as a genocide, not to overlook it, as the Indian government wants to call it, as riots. This is something that Angus, you and I talk about very, very often. And that is why it was so important for the rest of the world to understand that it was clearly a genocide, something that we really firmly believe. Now, as the various different documentaries are being put up, again, it is to raise that awareness and to bring in the narrative that it was a genocide. And that's important in all different channels, whether that's through government, whether that's through the non-governmental organizations or NGOs who have been investigating this for many, many years, right through to Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, along with many others. It is a systemic failure of the entire world and the United Nations in taking so long to define this as a genocide. Why are people refusing to look at it that way? Well, it's all about trying to deflect the responsibility and holding people account that may or may not be still linked to the government there in India. Now, for 40 years, the irreconcilable narratives have been the war over events of November 1984. In the days following the assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi by her Sikh bodyguards on October the 31st, a wave of horrific violence unleashed against the Sikh community in India was what we're discussing. Now, the official narrative, again, it has been used in official reports that were gathered by the different commissions, and that they still refer to it as the anti-Sikh riots, but the rest of the world is starting to get on page with recognizing it as the genocide that it was. Now, what does that mean in international law? Well, to understand that, the Geneva Convention defines genocide as having two critical components. One, the physical element, committing any of the following acts against a group, and that is killing members of the group, causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and we know that is true here. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Again, some of the actions that were so horrific that they acted out against the Sikhs in 1984 definitely fall within that group as well, as forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. And again, we know about the reprogramming, we know about what they call the re-education, and the ways in which the Hindutva have been trying to convert the Sikhs and turn them against each other. Now, the mental element, of course, is that the acts must be committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, or racial or religious group as such. Now, Of course, the physical acts of 1984, mass killings, widespread rape, the burning of homes and businesses are well documented, and therefore the entire legal and political battle hinges on the mental element, and that's the key phrase from the UN Convention, is as such. So again, confirming that it was exactly what they've defined as a genocide. So again, we don't want people to forget about it. We want to make sure that we continue to sound the alarm bells. And I'll play a quick few moments of another documentary and podcast that's out, that's linked to that site to bring in further context.
31st of October, March 94. What is happening now?
So 31st of October 1984 at 9:15 a.m. is when Gandhi is assassinated, and then the news is first broke on BBC around 10 o'clock because she was going to go to an interview with a BBC journalist, and then at 11 o'clock All India Radio mentions that she's been attacked, and then by 2 o'clock, according to some reports, the newspaper announces that she's dead. All India Radio between like 11 and 2 o'clock was running reports that there's been an attempt, there's an assassination, she's in hospital, and then at 2 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock, they announced that she was dead. And then immediately around 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock, outside, Indira Gandhi is taken to the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS hospital. And then outside of AIIMS, there's a meeting that takes place inside the hospital with senior Congress leaders, HKL, amongst others. And then they come out, and there's a crowd gathering, and they essentially kind of egg the crowd on, and then that crowd attacks Jani Zail Singh, who's the president of India. People try to grab his driver. He's hit on the head with a brick, I think. There's a bit of a tense environment. There's a few scuffles, and then on the 31st, I think, is the first person that is killed on the 31st, near the hospital.
Not being a Sikh person.
A Sikh, the first Sikh that's targeted. So Sikhs become the Nishana, they become the target on the 31st. So around 6 p.m., there's multiple incidences of violence around the areas surrounding the hospital, and especially with the news radio reporting on the Prime Minister's death. And so you start hearing this slogan of Punda.
So again, we could play more, but again, just in the interest of time, I just wanted to kind of give a timeline of how things started and what actually fired off the attacks against the Sikhs and what started a mass genocide of thousands and thousands of Sikhs, as well as some of the Hindus that were trying to protect them within their own homes. So again, that full one is linked up, and you can find the link on our Substack and more information about this as well. Angus, it really shows that the world is starting to come around and listen to the fact that there is evidence, but there's also a lot of brave people who continue to look for justice to this day, Angus.
Yeah, words matter, terminology matters, and certainly when it comes to legal decisions, words are very, very important. The word genocide carries with it such a huge amount of baggage in terms of what it implies, what has actually gone on behind that very single word. And it's been a very powerful agenda amongst the Sikh community to try and get the world to recognise the Sikh genocide. I'm using that term singularly, referring obviously to 1984, but there are certainly more than one genocides that have occurred since 1947 against the Sikh people. Let's not forget that. And it's very interesting looking at the legal definitions. I mean, it's very clear that it was a genocide. For in terms of even common sense implies it was a genocide. Certainly, it meets the first criteria of violence perpetrated against the people, the target people. Yeah, I mean that's obviously unambiguously clear. The second part is the intention. Was the intention was it an act of revenge, and it didn't matter whether the fact that they were Sikhs, or was there a deliberate intention to drive Sikhs out of existence? Essentially, is what the legal definition is trying to define. And again, yeah, it is, I suppose there is a legal argument that you can argue both ways. But again, it's all nuances. And it's sad that it even has to come down to nuances. Because very clearly, in terms of you or I, James, or any other person out there, particularly any Sikhs in the community, they see this as genocide. It's absolutely unambiguous. It was a deliberate intent by the Indian state to target Sikhs specifically. There was no Hindus targeted or anybody else targeted. It was Sikhs deliberately being targeted by the Congress government and members of the Congress government who whipped up the mods to target specifically Sikhs. So again, it's the legal definitions are very, very precise, as indeed they always have to be. But life is not black and white. Life is not that precise. Life is always full of slightly grey areas and nuances. And yeah, sadly, it would be tragic if this is not legally defined as a genocide, because clearly, as I say, for common sense points of fact, it was a genocide. But also, interestingly, you can apply that term to the Sikh community since 1947. I could actually legally argue, according to those definitions, that life for the Sikh community in the Punjab has been one big genocide since 1947, because you can prove the violence that has been perpetrated specifically against Sikhs in the Punjab, whether it was 1984 or whether it was the events of November 1984. Firstly in June, Operation Blue Star, the events in November, the genocide that we often refer to, but also what followed over the next sort of 15 plus years and during the 1980s and 1990s is the, again, specifically Sikhs who were targeted by the Indian state, by violence, and with an intention to drive Sikhs out of existence. And indeed, even a relatively peaceful agenda going on at the moment, where the Indian state is doing its absolute level best to drive out Sikh culture, drive out Sikh heritage, to bury it, to remove it from existence. This is driven by the RSS ideology that is now controlling the Indian government. So you could actually argue that the genocide is ongoing and has been going on since 1947 and is still very much ongoing, because it meets these definitions. Sikhs are still being extrajudicially killed, harassed, murdered, intimidated, tortured. I mean, we have countless examples of Sikhs being specifically targeted for arrest, then torture, then indefinite detention. Jagtar Singh Johal, Amritpal Singh, amongst many, many, many others. The Bandi Singhs, for example, who are being targeted for violent means and with a specific agenda to try and bury and destroy and eradicate the Sikh culture and heritage from India, certainly from the Punjab. So sadly, yeah, these terms matter. Legally, these terms matter. But what is important, and I think as we often really come full circle around in the argument, the only solution is going to have to be the establishment of a sovereign Sikh state. Because ultimately, even if a court of law, an international court, defines what happened in India and Punjab as not a genocide, there's no justice there. And even if it does define it as a genocide, there still will be no justice. Again, it's just words at the end of the day. So words matter. But ultimately, in practical terms, there's no justice delivered. The people who perpetrated those genocides, plural, are still running free, most of them. They've either died out through natural causes, or they're still running free, or they've served minimal jail terms. Again, justice denied. So ultimately, there will never be justice, as we often say on the channel, James. There's never going to be justice. It's naive to even expect that we will ever see real justice for these crimes that were perpetrated against the Sikh community. So therefore, the only solution to this, the only way to keep the Sikh community safe in perpetuity, is the establishment of a sovereign Sikh nation, that of Khalistan, where they can manage their own governance, they can manage their own society, and they can live free from this oppression, free from this persecution, and free from any future genocide, James.
Yeah, absolutely, Angus. And that's exactly right. That, that is the only guarantee that they will be able to fortify their security of their people, of their culture, and of the future, and to be able to steer their own narrative when it comes to what that future is going to look like. We've seen in the past through if you go back in history to the Sikh Empire, and how they incorporated and allowed equal voices from all members of the community, regardless as to whether they were Muslim, whether they were Christian, whether they were Dalits, and so forth. And that is, I think, what one of the stepping stones to a huge role of leadership in the region will look like, and that's through Khalistan giving equal representation to all of those who reside there. And that, I think, is going to be huge to show other nations that, no, you don't need to fear each other. You need to embrace each other and allow each other to bring the best parts of themselves to the table.
Yeah, and this is why we need to keep reminding every member of the Sikh community, particularly the younger generations, of what happened in the past, because this could very well happen again in the future. These things, it's the sad tragedy of life and humanity, is these genocides just keep recurring, and it could happen again in Punjab. I mean, lots of commenters have warned that there's all sorts of things seem to be brewing at the moment in Punjab, and I mean, God forbid that there is another genocide or another terrible act in the planning. But as we keep saying, the only way to avoid this, firstly, is to recognise that these things happen and recognise the sad, tragic reality of how regularly these things happen. And also then is to realise, well, look, the only solution for the people of Punjab, and particularly the Sikh community, is their own land where they can control their own destiny and their own future and their own decision making. So, but talking of violence and intimidation, I'm going to jump to your part of the world, James, and in Canada. Interestingly, there was what they call a town hall, a televised town hall on CBC News. And we've reported recently, in fact, quite a lot, James, you reported how gunshots, lots of threats, intimidation, demands for money, this organised crime, particularly targeting Sikh activists and just generally the South Asian community and businesses across particularly British Columbia's south coast. Now, it's not just regional crime, it's an issue of what we call transnational oppression has been legally recognised as transnational oppression coming from, of course, the India, and using these criminal assets, these proxy criminals, to undertake these operations to target specifically these communities, in particular the Sikh community. And of course, the proxy criminals include, of course, the Bishnoi gang, which has now been designated officially as a terrorist organisation. Indeed, because they themselves have actually even claimed responsibility for these attacks, which in itself is pretty inexplicable. But anyway, so this town hall that was organised by CBC News this week, it was brought together to discuss the ongoing extortion shooting crisis that's disproportionately targeting the Sikh community right across Canada, not just in BC. Now, during the event, one of the spokespeople who stood up is a well-known activist, a guy called Maninder Singh. And he gave a really powerful speech during this, and he really highlighted a lot of the issues, obviously, that we're very familiar with and we talk about on a regular basis. But he did highlight the fact that the issue of this transnational oppression and manifesting itself in these sorts of this crime wave, it's known to be part of this Indian state transnational repression agenda, and it's designed to subjugate, to really try and intimidate and harass the diaspora communities, particularly in Canada. And that, of course, is where Maninder himself has been outlined as a target. As you'll see from the video, he talks about he has a threat to life against him. But it's also, obviously, not just him. It's the whole movement, the whole Khalistan movement. And sadly, we saw the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, again, another high-profile Khalistani campaigner. And we have this sort of weird, almost schizophrenic sort of I would say public appearance of Canada on the global stage. We have this Liberal Party government under Carney, who seems to publicly ignore what's going on. He's ignoring it. He's almost sort of seems completely oblivious to what is clearly going on in his nation and what India are up to. And as I often say, he's quite happy to shake the hands of Narendra Modi, and his counterpart is Anand, who shakes Jai Shankar's hand, her counterpart in India. That's in public. And they do continue to celebrate their relations with India. They're always talking about trade deals, etc., etc. But anyway, it's important. These things, this town hall particularly, was very important. It was televised, and therefore it was out in the public domain. And again, the audience was pretty widespread. It's not just the Sikh community who watched this. It was the general population of Canada who watched this. And CBC obviously has a large audience. So again, it's really important that these issues have been highlighted publicly. Now, Maninder, in this broadcast, he clearly outlined the situation to highlight the issues that he and, of course, all the other Sikhs campaigning for Khalistan, etc., face. But despite these threats of imminent assassination, he talks about his threat to life that he's been issued, and he challenged the panel that was set up to sort of to host and facilitate this town hall. He challenged the panel and viewers to understand the crisis in the wider context. Not just, look, it's just our small community that's been targeted, and why should you care about our small community? It's a broader issue. It's a broader international problem rooted in India's foreign interference and transnational repression program. In other words, it affects all of us. This is a nation that calls itself the largest democracy on the planet. This is a nation that we are signing trade deals up with. This is a nation that is now known to abuse human rights to such an extreme level that we do know, even just down to the small levels, that there are torture cells in each prison cell, in each police station. They are killing our own citizens on our own soil. Is this really a nation that we need to be doing business with? So that came out. But let me play you. I'll play you this video so you can hear his very powerful speech. And Maninder has been very active. In fact, he was recently on UK TV saying very, very similar things. But have a listen to this. I'll say have a listen to this. I haven't got the volume up. Let me just start again. Sort of failed at the first hurdle there.
But India is playing in this. That we keep skirting around the issue that this is a Bishnoi issue. Bishnoi is one hand on 100-hand demon that is India. If it's not Bishnoi...
Kir, you have Maninder Singh there with you.
Yeah, here.
I'm Maninder Singh with the BC Gurdwaras Council and the Sikh Federation of Canada. Mr. Quinn, you asked earlier that we share some personal experiences, so I will share a quick personal experience with a question. I arrived here early, about 5:15. I waited, came in as quickly as I could. After I asked this question, I will leave before anyone else in this crowd leaves. And the reason for that is I have multiple duty to warns of imminent assassination by the federal government and federal agencies in this country. And there's many, many other people in this room right now that are kind of feeling in the same kind of situation that I am. And when you have these types of situations, you come and go, and you don't come and go at your own will. If anything happened to somebody else because I was in the room, that would be something that I would have to live with for the rest of my life, however long that might be. And that's the reality of the situation that we have to get to. This is a life and death situation that we're talking about. And I agree with my colleague here. This started in June of 2023, not in November, not any other month. It started with Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And we have to acknowledge that because that is the role that India is playing in this. If we keep skirting around the issue that this is a Bishnoi issue, Bishnoi is one hand on 100-hand demon that is India. If it's not Bishnoi, it's going to be somebody else tomorrow and somebody else. This guy is sitting in an Indian prison, running an international organization. How does India not know what he's doing? There's no way that he's sitting in a maximum security prison running this operation without India somehow being involved, and yet we're not willing to even say India's name in certain circumstances and forums. And this is part of the problem that we're dealing with here. When we have Mr. Jaishankar sitting in Niagara Falls right now getting handshakes, we have Mr. Modi come to the G7 in June in Kananaskis and being welcomed with the red carpet. These people aren't even a part of the G7. Why are we going out of our way to actually invite them here? And the comment made just right now about 1 year, what has changed? Because we've been told nothing that's changed in this country when it comes to violence against the overall Canadian community. India does foreign interference here. They meddle in our elections. They meddle in our democratic institutions. What else do we need to hear about a country that's a rogue state, an enemy state that is targeting, don't make this a Sikh issue, that this is just the Sikh community. We have members of our Hindu community and their leadership in this community who have multiple times been attacked as well in this. This is going to go beyond just one community or two communities where there's not just money at play. This is coercion, as was stated earlier. And we have to get to a point that if the members of this panel have ideas and solutions when it comes to a national problem, stop giving us regional band-aid solutions.
Thank you very much, Mohinder.
So you can see how how powerful his speech was, and he's elevated it from. It's not just a Sikh issue. It's not even just a Bishnoi issue. It's a bigger issue. It's an international issue. This is a rogue state. This is a state running out of accountability, where our own government, for reasons only known to itself, is shaking hands with the leader of this nation that is actually threatening Canadian citizens. And of course, it's not just Canadian citizens, it's citizens right around the democratic West, here in the UK, and of course in the US and other countries. So again, it's just highlighting the fact, look, let's not just focus on the gun crime and the street crime that's going on. It's a bigger story than that. And as he said, the practical reality is that he has to enter that hall and leave that hall very carefully, always looking over his shoulder, wondering if a gun's going to appear somewhere. That's his day-to-day practical reality. And this is the reality of India. This is the reality of it's not just Bishnoi. And as he says, how on earth can Bishnoi run an international criminal organisation, well, now a terrorist organisation, from a prison cell in Gujarat? The only way he could do that is with a complicit assistance, or at least acquiescence, of the Indian state, the Indian government. So he's trying to wake people up, saying, look, this isn't just a little crime, local issue affecting one of our small communities that you can all turn a blind eye. Well, it doesn't affect me. Actually, it does affect you, because this is a bigger issue. It is not just a national issue, it is an international issue. This is a whole government that is targeting citizens of Canada, and again, not just Sikhs, but Hindus and other people. And where does it end? If they're getting away with it, as they currently are, getting away with killing Sikhs, who's next? It could be you next. And that's really the big message here. So Maninder Singh, it's a very powerful speech there, James. And I think, again, we're obviously very familiar with the subject matter and the story he's talking about. But as I say, this is a CBC broadcast, a large audience, and this is, again, all about educating and spreading the word about what India is truly up to, what India truly represents. That's the important message, James.
Absolutely. And I've seen Maninder speak in person, as well as many clips online. And he is very articulate. He is very educated. He is very passionate in what he believes in. And this is what's led to him being targeted by the government of India. Now, just recently, when there were shots fired at a residence, one of the bullets did strike an individual who was in her bed. She was an unintended victim of this crime. So if you think that this crime wave is not impacting other Canadians, then you are really burying your head in the sand. And that's an important message, I think, that he really tried to reiterate here, is that it is impacting and risking the lives of all Canadians, not just our Sikh community, not just our Hindu community, but everybody, Angus.
Absolutely right. As I say, it's sad in so many ways that this whole story, which obviously is specific to Canada, is completely mirrored here in the UK. We have countless activists and campaigners, in particular the Khalistan movement, but just generally the Sikh community, who likewise have threats to their lives, have these warning threats issued by our own law enforcement and intelligence agencies, saying your life is under danger. And ironically, they can't say, they're not allowed to say, well, it's from India. They say, there is somebody out there who is threatening your life, please be careful. Well, thanks for that. But what is the government doing about it? What is the British government doing? About as much as Mark Carney is doing about it at the moment. And so I'm always the first to line up and criticise the British government, whether it's Conservative or Labour, in terms of protecting our Sikh community, but specifically protecting those who we do know legally and state acknowledged are under threat of their lives. The state has had to warn these people, there are people out there trying to kill you. But we're not going to do anything about it. We're not even going to talk about it publicly. We're going to shake the hand of the man who's behind all this. I mean, that's the sad tragedy of all this. But anyway, as I say, I shake my head in disbelief when we always talk about this. But sadly, it's real politics is the reality of it. We'd still have to maintain some sort of relations with India. But sadly, the balance is tipped too far in favour of India at the moment. We are not standing up, as indeed Justin Trudeau did, at least. As I say, always full credit to Justin Trudeau. He had the courage to stand up and call India out for what it was doing publicly. And, Mark Carney sadly has not followed suit. Keir Starmer in the UK has definitely not followed that line either, despite all the knowledge that he is aware of India's transnational oppression here in the UK, and of course the murder of Avtar Singh Kandar, the likely murder of Avtar Singh Kandar. Anyway, right, James, talking of operations of RAW and the intelligence services of India, I'm going to jump to another interesting video. Sikhs for Justice actually posted up a couple of videos which I picked up on. I thought these are quite interesting. This is the video. Let me just turn the volume down so I can speak over it. So this is a video of a gentleman that they are asking, do you recognise this guy? He was spotted. This is outside the Indian consulate, and this is believed to be an agent for the research and analysis wing. And basically, they believe he's an intelligence agent, not a very fit-looking chap, I have to say. I don't think he'd be doing much running around like James Bond, but certainly he's there. But what he was seen filming Khalistani campaigners and Sikhs outside who were protesting. And the only reason you film people like that is because you want to know who they are, you want to identify them, and then you want to launch operations against them, etc. So anyway, there is this appeal by Sikhs for Justice and amongst the community generally. Do you recognise this guy? If so, please contact the RCMP. And as I say, they believe he is a spy, and they believe he is using Brampton Triveni Mandir. That's the Hindu temple in Brampton, because they believe that mandir is used by RAW, as indeed we do know. Obviously, the consulate is used as all consulates are used by nations' intelligence services to form the base for intelligence operations. But it's also believed that Hindu mandirs across the world, but also specifically here in Brampton, are being used by RAW and the intelligence agencies, the NSA, what have you. The Indian intelligence agencies to launch their operations. And this guy was seen filming the Khalistanis campaigners, again, highly suspicious. And the protest, just so you are aware of, the protest wasn't just obviously a pro-Khalistan protest, as they often are, flying the wonderful Khalistan flag. It was actually specifically protesting against the consulate officials' abuse of the Life Certificate program. The Life Certificate program, they hold these camps on a regular basis. The Life Certificate is to do with Indian pensions and drawing. It's for diaspora community members to draw their pensions from India, and they need to register and submit all sorts of documentation, etc., to get what's called a life certificate. But it's believed that these camps, as they call them, these camps are actually used to recruit. They're used by RAW to recruit operatives amongst the citizenship of Canada, amongst the community, to then obviously undertake their operations, spy on the Khalistani and the Sikh community, etc., etc. And it's also used as a cover to record and profile and identify pro-Khalistan Sikhs who are obviously publicly rallying against the consulate officials misusing this program. And this guy filmed them. Again, one wonders why, highly suspicious. But we do know that clearly when protesters are identified, they become targets, James. That's the danger of what's going on here. And just before I hand over to you, James, just another video, which again I find fascinating. Sikhs for Justice posted this one up. This is... let me just press play on this. Here we go. This is outside the Indian consulate. Sorry, beg your pardon. No, this is the mandir. This is another mandir. But this is where Indian consulate officials run these life certificate camps, and again believed to be spy recruiting missions. But a drone was seen over this mandir, and the question is, whose drone was it? It is actually believed it's. They don't think it's from the consulate itself. They actually believe it's the RCMP. So actually, interestingly, and we don't know, this hasn't been corroborated, but this large drone was seen over the mandir filming the mandir itself. Now, it may well be, for all we know, it could be a raw drone filming the protesters, but actually it is believed, and Sikhs for Justice believe it is actually the RCMP and potentially CSIS monitoring the goings on inside the mandir. In other words, maybe the RCMP are stepping up. Of course, we know the CSIS are fully aware of the transnational repression program and agenda, and the fact that operatives are operating in Canada, undertaking these operations. So we do know CSIS is surveilling the Indian diaspora and surveilling these raw operatives. We don't know, James, but so it's fascinating to see these things going on.
Absolutely, Angus. And it's very common now for any type of protest to have the RCMP with their high-resolution, very, very powerful cameras on these drones circling. And I've seen that protests against Russia for the invasion of Ukraine in Vancouver. I've seen it at many other events, including the referendum at the Sikh Gurdwara in Surrey. So it's not uncommon for the RCMP to have the drones up. That does look like a drone I've seen many a times over different events. So again, yeah, I would assume that it would be CSIS and the RCMP trying to keep an eye on what's going on and the comings and goings, as they are very much still in the depths of investigating all of those activities. Now, if you don't mind just sharing my screen for a quick second, Angus, I'm just going to play a quick clip here, something that I promised last night and I almost forgot about.
Right,
and it's the same event, actually, that you're covering. And let's... I think I got to hit share, don't I? Is that up on your screen,
Yeah,
Angus?
up on your screen. Should be that. There you go, James. You're away.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. So I'll just play this really quickly here. And the reason why I thought it was funny is because they are blasting this audio. And let's see if we can get it here. Okay, that was that. Sorry, that was the wrong clip, Angus. But anyway, I'll play it tomorrow night. And it's basically what they were doing there through those loudspeakers is blasting the speech that Justin Trudeau had made in the legislature and on the House floor. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that because I thought that was just awesome. I loved it. It was so powerful to just let those words echo right into the Mandir where the representatives of the India government were at. I just thought that was so funny. I got a good laugh out of it. And I just had to give kudos to whoever came up with that plan because that was beautiful. That was a true sign of a peaceful protest that had some power.
Yeah, and I think it may well be on this video. I'm just playing some audio there so for our audience can hear it. That must be the other video. Yes, I think. Yeah, James, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I pulled up the wrong one as well. But yeah, I just loved it. I thought it was so funny, but I also thought that it had such power to it that, yeah, that was the one that I mentioned last night. And I almost forgot about bringing it up tonight.
Canadian security agencies have been
There it is.
actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Marvellous. So well done to the community for getting out there and broadcasting that. That's worth a very hearty chuckle. Throwing that at the operatives. There you go. Suck on that, guys.
I loved it.
Marvellous. Yeah. Excellent. So on that joyful note, let's move on to our comments column. And as always, loads of wonderful comments. Thank you to our audience for all your contributions on this. We start off with Hatby, one of our regulars. Back to the blasts going on in Delhi. A mass collection of weapons and explosives were found in the home of a Bajrang Dal worker in Ghaziabad. But Modi's media, surprise, are not even mentioning it. And again, this warning, Hatby's been quite forthright on his warnings, believing that the RSS are planning another mass genocide of Sikhs and Muslims. Well, James, they say they never stop, do they? It wouldn't surprise me.
No, and that's something that we've been discussing there, Angus. And what's going to come out of these recent bombings and explosions, or accidental explosions, so to speak. But what is going to be the action of the Modi government using that as cover and falsely accusing others of their partnerships or cooperation there and being able to target others.
Yeah, and Knockdown has a good knock at the BBC. We talked about Trump suing the BBC, which I have to say I'm all in favour for, because what the BBC did was absolutely outrageous. But anyway, as you rightly point out, Knockdown, during 1984 and during the genocide, the BBC broadcasters, you said they were clearly in favour of the Hindutva state that were perpetrating the genocide. Likewise, you said that and recently, in fact, it was just recently they did a Modi documentary where they were quite sort of brutal and quite honest about what Modi was like, what he was up to, the butcher of Gujarat, as he was known. But of course, when it came to intimidation, it was the BBC India who produced this documentary, but they were intimidated into silence by the Modi government, which actually I have to say was pretty cowardly on behalf of the BBC. But it was a pragmatic decision, because basically if they want to operate and continue to operate in India, they have to abide by Modi's rules. Again, we talk about the lack of free press in India. Well, there you go. The BBC, which actually is supposed to be impartial, was basically intimidated and harassed into silence by the government. Again, that's not what we call free press. And as you rightly say, I strongly believe the BBC have all the proofs and videos of the Sikh genocide in India, at least from Delhi, but they've downplayed it. In other words, they again have followed not an impartial agenda, but they have been cowed into silence, James.
Absolutely. And we've seen in the past where they have literally seized the BBC in India, where they've had federal agents, intelligence agents, law enforcement actually go in and raid the BBC offices and detain people. So we've seen it, and it's just an ongoing proof that the intimidation continues.
Yeah, it's very similar parallel to Google. Google, we stand for the truth or whatever. Well, but China and even India control these search engines in their own countries, and it's the same with the BBC. If you want to operate in our country, you do it under our rules, and of course our rules are completely undemocratic, they're authoritarian, and yet these supposed bastions of impartiality and free speech, etc., they're always very quick to give in to these regimes, because it always comes down to money, as always, James, does it not?
Absolutely, Angus.
Kanwar Bir Singh. This comes back to my podcast with Dr. Grewal. We talked about the university, of course. The protest still very much going on. These next couple of days, really crucial days in this protest. We talked about in the podcast, we talked about the origins of the Sikh education system, and it does have its roots back as far as Maharaja Ranjit Singh's empire of the 19th century. And of course, originally it does draw, of course, from the 10 gurus, from the very first Guru Nanak Dev Ji. But ultimately, it was then funneled and focused into the Sikh Empire, which then in turn sort of gave birth to the education system, which manifested itself in the 1880s in the Punjab University. Unfortunately, it was when the British in the West and this Leitner fellow got involved in it. And of course, they started imposing, or we, the West, or whatever, started imposing our own straitjacket. Let's just say, you don't do it your way, you'll do it our way, and that's when things started to go wrong. But as you rightly say, Punjab University is under attack with undemocratic policies by the fascist politicians of India. Well, I mean, regardless of what happened in the early 20th century, what really matters is what's happening now. And that is this, as you call it, the fascist government of India is trying to impose its restrictions, its agenda on Punjab University, which is in itself is inexcusable and certainly undemocratic, James.
Absolutely. And, we could go on for quite a deal on this, but again, it's all about, what we find, what we report, what others report, and what's happening today. So we report on the past, the culture, and the history, but we also have never forgotten that the importance is keeping the eye on the ball today, so you know where you're throwing it in the future, Angus.
And thanks to Awesome Stevie for your fun fact, as the Akal Takht in the Ahmadiyya complex in Amritsar. The Akal Takht was constructed by Guru Hargobind Ji. He was the sixth guru, and it was deliberately designed to be taller than the Delhi Capitol building to send a very clear message to symbolise superiority, supremacy, and of course freedom from India. Well, sadly, at the moment we still don't have freedom from India, but one day, James, there will be freedom from India, and the Akal Takht will sit high and proud and mighty.
And I hope that when Khalistan is formed, they allow dual citizenship recognition so that we can hold citizenship in our home nations and, of course, as honorary members of Khalistan.
Well, I look forward to hopefully having a Khalistan passport in hand. That would be certainly something to hold with pride. And just actually on the note about about the freedom from India, the protests as well going on. One of the I noticed just coming up in sort of the discussions now is the whole concept of Chandigarh. There is now, I think, part of the protests are trying to bring in this potential new agenda. It's not so new, but this agenda that we haven't talked much about, which is Chandigarh itself is trying to reclaim Chandigarh as the capital. Now, after the, if my history is correct, the State Reorganisations Act of 1966, which divided Punjab again into Haryana, Punjab, and Uttar Pradesh, is that Chandigarh was lost essentially to Punjab as a capital. It became a sort of a union capital sitting sort of amongst all these states. And there is now a movement, I think, to demand that Chandigarh comes back to be the capital of Punjab. So again, we'll follow that. And I do know Surinder's got more on that in the Punjabi side. So if you want to know more of that, do watch Surinder's latest broadcast about that specifically. But so we'll try and cover that in the near future. And Mastan Singh Dhillai, interestingly, the university was built on Punjab land or Punjab land. It was built by Punjabis, and Centre Delhi RSS have got nothing to do with it. They just want to grab it and teach the Sanghi language, RSS ideology, and Punjabi language and culture will be destroyed. This is what the battle is about. Thank you, Mastan Singh Dhillai. Basically summing up, this is what it's all about. This university was built by Punjabis on Punjabi land to educate Punjabis and ensure the continuance and maintenance of Punjabi culture and Sikh culture. And yet it's the RSS that are trying their damnedest because they hate it, they resent it, they fear it. And that's why they're trying to take control, James.
Absolutely. And it's all about getting your voice heard, getting out there and making sure that the history and the culture is protected. And on that, tomorrow night, I'll be talking a bit about the importance of voices being heard. And we'll cover what's coming up this weekend, and that's the Khalistan referendum vote in Ottawa. So we'll have that tomorrow night. And again, the importance of everyone coming together to make sure the voices are heard, Angus.
Looking forward to that. Absolutely we are. And the next three comments refer to what it's the wider picture here. So if any students come to harm, the Indian government will be prosecuted, and if students are harmed, if this turns into something quite violent, God forbid it does, let's hope it doesn't, it stays peaceful, but if things do get out of hand here, as protests tend to often do, the government of India will be blamed, and it could potentially, as I talk about catalytic events, it could essentially lead on to the Khalsa Raj being established as the ultimate outcome. And Pritam Kaur likewise has said, interestingly, that this involves the police now, is that Punjabi police chief has publicly stated that he will not tolerate any outsiders, any police from other forces, obviously specifically central forces, Delhi control. He won't tolerate any interference from outside. He said, look, we're in control of this situation, and we have not stopped these protests. We, the Punjabi police, amazingly, we believe in democracy. So thank you for letting us know that, Pritam Kaur. And Bobby Singh finally says, look, be careful, the RSS is brutal. Whatever happens, they're going to kill people in Punjab. We've seen it over and over again. Yes, indeed we have. Whether it's done by its suppression or by bullets, it's better to fight for it. We may as well fight for it because they're going to kill us anyway. Well, certainly we will never advocate for violence. And any violence in Punjab primarily has always been in self-defense. Or if you go back decades, any violence or what they call militant uprising was always a defensive position. It was always defensive. So, James, we talk about catalytic events. Maybe these protests that we often say could lead to bigger and more exciting things.
Absolutely. And we know that, you look at the history of Russia, when they take out people who are in opposition or speak out, they mysteriously fall out hotel windows, as I've said before, that don't even open. With India, though, their purpose is a lot different. They want people to know that they are at the helm of that gun or that instrument of destruction, because they want to use violence as intimidation to try and reassert their control over the population. But again, it's about holding them accountable if anything does happen.
Apologies to our audience.
And again, they try to keep an arm's length to have that plausible deniability, but we'll know who to blame if something happens.
And apologies to our audience, slight technical issue on my side. I've lost my audio, but I'm going to continue regardless, James. I know I can't hear you, but you can hear me. But anyway, the final set as we rush into the home straight of the show. No farmers, no food says. Very informative. It's because of channels like this one and people like you guys spreading the truth. We get the full truth around Sikh issues in the Punjab. Thank you. Well, thank you for your wonderful support. Thank you for your comment. As we often say, do spread the word. And Paramjit Benning says, keep pressing, keep the pressure on. We will. That's why we're here. We exist to keep that pressure on. Thanks for supporting the truth. Well, don't thank us. That's what we stand for. And Jagtar City with the final wonderful comment, James. This is a nice way to sign off the show. O Creator, Lord of the Universe, and millions more universes, the searcher of thoughts, the inner knower of all beings. Please bless Sikhs. Let it be Khalistan. Khalistan Zindabad, James.
What a beautiful sentiment.
And there we go. That's it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. We must draw things to a close there. Do keep those comments coming. Always much appreciated. Very informative. Lots of these comments when you let us know things that you know that we don't know about. It's all part of the educational journey. And likewise, do let us know through the comments or even through the email message@satellite.com if there's anything you'd like us to research or talk about. Excuse me. Any stories that you think we should be covering. But that's it for another day. It's a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.